The desert wind howled a tune of forgotten dreams and hard-won lessons. For a Jedi, the Force was a guiding light, a cosmic compass. But for Kanan Jarrus, a scavenger on the fringes of the galaxy, survival was a different kind of discipline. This is the story of how a Jedi Knight's mind was reforged by the gritty realities of the street, how he learned to trust again, and how he found a family in the most unlikely of places. From Jedi discipline to street smarts. The Jedi Temple was a place of serene discipline, of focused meditation and formal instruction. Kanan, as a young Caleb Dume, was taught the elegant arts of lightsaber combat and the subtle, philosophical nuances of the Force. He was a student of the light, taught to see the world in clear lines of good and evil. But the universe is not so simple. The cold, brutal lesson of Order 66 taught him that. The years that followed transformed him from a Jedi Knight-in-training to a street-savvy survivor. He had to trade the flowing robes of a Jedi for the grimy clothes of a commoner. The Jedi Code was replaced by a new, unwritten law: keep your head down, trust no one, and always have an escape route. He became a man of few words, his mind a steel trap of information and quick calculations. As Niccolò Machiavelli wrote, "The ends justify the means." Kanan wasn't thinking of galactic justice. He was thinking about his next meal, his next safe place to sleep. His skills, once honed for noble purposes, were now applied to the art of survival. He learned how to hotwire a speeder, haggle with ruthless merchants, and read the subtle tells of a grimy underworld. His intuition, once used to sense the presence of the Force, was now a finely tuned instrument for sensing danger, for knowing when to fight and when to flee. The Jedi Temple taught him to look to the Force. The streets taught him to look over his shoulder. This was a different kind of training, a brutal but essential apprenticeship in the real world. It stripped him of the Jedi's high-minded detachment and gave him a grounded, pragmatic understanding of the people he was now living among. Learning to trust. Again, the deepest scar left by Order 66 was not a physical one. It was the chasm of distrust that had opened in his heart. The betrayal by the very soldiers he fought beside was so profound that it made him question the very concept of loyalty. For years, he was a solitary figure, a lone wolf with an invisible wall around him, a fortress of solitude built to protect himself from the pain of another betrayal. Trusting someone again was a slow, painful process, like trying to heal a wound that refused to close. But the universe has a way of placing unexpected people in your path. It began with Hera Syndulla, the green-skinned Twi'lek pilot with a fire in her eyes and a boundless faith in the fight against the Empire. She was unlike anyone he had ever met, a pragmatic idealist who saw the good in the galaxy even in its darkest hour. She was patient with his reluctance, his gruff demeanor, his constant need for an exit strategy. Her unshakable hope was a soft, steady rain on the parched earth of his soul, slowly eroding the walls he had built. Kanan's journey from solitude to companionship was not a straight line. It was filled with false starts, misgivings, and the constant temptation to retreat. But Hera's unwavering belief in a cause, and in him, was an irresistible force. She didn't demand his trust. She earned it, not with grand gestures, but with the quiet, persistent act of being there. It was a testament to the power of human connection, a concept that had seemed lost to him for so long, finding family in unexpected places. The Ghost was more than just a freighter. It was a home, and the crew was more than just a team. They were a family. This was a concept Kanan had thought he would never know again after the fall of the Jedi. The Jedi Order was a family, but one built on a shared philosophy and duty, not on the messy, beautiful reality of shared life. The Ghost crew was different. They were a motley group of misfits, bound not by a formal code, but by a shared purpose and a deep, genuine care for one another. There was Zeb, the loyal and gruff Lasat warrior who became his unexpected brother-in-arms. Sabine, the young Mandalorian artist who channeled her rebellious spirit into vibrant acts of defiance. And of course Ezra, the street urchin with a raw, untrained connection to the Force. Ezra was the one who truly shattered Kanan's solitude. The boy was a mirror, reflecting his own past as a lost and directionless youth. Taking on Ezra as his Padawan was the ultimate act of faith, a conscious decision to re-embrace his Jedi identity and the responsibilities that came with it. Kanan didn't just teach Ezra taught him. The boy's chaotic, unpredictable nature forced him to loosen his rigid control, to trust his instincts, and to connect with the Force in a way that was both ancient and new. He was no longer a lone survivor. He was a leader, a mentor, a father figure. He found in the Ghost Crew a new kind of family, one born not of a grand institution, but of a shared struggle and an unshakable bond. As the poet Robert Frost wrote, "Home is the place where, when you have to go there, they have to take you in." For Kanan Jarrus, the ghost was his home. It was the place where he was no longer a survivor, but a family member. He had shed the Jedi's discipline and learned the street's pragmatism. He had overcome his distrust and found a new purpose. The last Padawan had found a new life, a new family, and a new reason to fight. The Jedi may have been gone, but the spirit of hope, compassion, and justice lived on, carried not by an institution, but by a small, courageous band of rebels. The lightsaber is not just a weapon, it is a symbol. For the Jedi, it represents peace, justice, and the light side of the Force. But for Kanan Jarrus, it was a burden, a silent, humming weight that he carried not just on his belt, but in the deepest parts of his soul. This is the story of that burden, of the constant internal conflict, the immense pressure of mentorship, and the unyielding fear that defined his life as a Jedi in a post-Jedi galaxy. This is the tale of the burden of the blade, the internal conflict, a Jedi without an order. Kanan, as a young Padawan, was taught to live by these rules, to see the world through the lens of the Jedi Code. But when Order 66 shattered that world, he was left with the ideals, but without the structure. He was a Jedi without a temple, a knight without a council, a believer in a faith that had been declared a lie. This created a profound internal conflict. How does one remain true to an ideal when the organization that championed it has fallen to ruin? Kanan had to forge his own path, a path not found in any Jedi holocron. He had to decide what a Jedi truly was, separate from the robes and the titles. He had to be a protector without the authority to protect, a peacekeeper in a galaxy at war with itself. He was forced to reconcile the ancient, almost monastic teachings of the Jedi with the brutal, pragmatic realities of the streets. This internal struggle was his constant companion. He had to choose when to intervene and when to remain hidden. A traditional Jedi might have rushed to every cry for help, but Kanan, hardened by his years in hiding, understood the value of discretion. He was a force for good, but a silent one, a phantom of the old order, fighting a war he was never officially a part of. He was, in a sense, the living embodiment of the Force's will, acting on instinct and personal conviction rather than a council's decree. This was the burden of the blade, to carry the legacy of a fallen order without the support system that had sustained it for centuries. As the philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche wrote, "He who fights with monsters should be careful lest he thereby become a monster." Kanan had to navigate the moral gray areas of rebellion without losing his connection to the light, a constant balancing act that defined his very essence. Mentoring Ezra, the fear of failure. The lightsaber was a symbol of his past, and so was Ezra. When Kanan discovered the street urchin with a raw, powerful connection to the Force, he was forced to confront his own demons. Taking on a Padawan was not just a duty, it was a profound act of faith, a leap of courage into the very past he had tried so hard to outrun. But with that courage came an immense fear of failure. Kanan's own training was incomplete. He was a Padawan when his master fell, and he had to finish his education in the brutal school of survival. Now, he was the teacher. He was responsible for shaping a young, impressionable mind, for guiding a nascent Force user through a galaxy full of peril and temptation. He saw his own struggles reflected in Ezra's impulsiveness, his own impatience in Ezra's rash decisions. Every mistake Ezra made was a painful reminder of his own past and a terrifying glimpse into a potential future where he, Kanan, had failed as a master. This was the core of his mentoring burden. He wasn't just teaching lightsaber forms, He was teaching a way of life. He was passing on a legacy that had almost been extinguished, a legacy he himself had almost forgotten. He feared that he was not enough, that he was an unworthy master, a flawed guardian. He had to teach Ezra to trust the Force, to trust in himself, and to trust in his master, all while grappling with his own profound trust issues. His love for Ezra was a powerful motivator, but it was also a source of constant anxiety. He knew that if he failed, it would not just be the end of Ezra, but the end of a hope for the future, a hope that was entrusted to him alone. The constant threat, the psychological toll. The weight of the blade was not just internal, it was external. The lightsaber on his belt was not a symbol of power, it was a target. For years, Kanan lived with the gnawing fear of discovery. Every Imperial patrol, every routine checkpoint, every curious glance from a stranger was a potential threat. He was a phantom, but one who knew that at any moment, the Empire's hounds would find his scent. This constant threat took a profound psychological toll. He couldn't trust anyone, not completely. He had to always be on guard, always ready to run, to fight, or to die. The paranoia was a silent, corrosive force, eating away at his peace of mind. He was a Jedi, meant to be at one with the Force, but he was constantly at war with his own anxieties. The peace he sought was always a step away, always just out of reach. His burden was amplified by the fact that he was not alone. The Ghost Crew was his family, but they were also his weakness. The love and loyalty he felt for them was his greatest strength, but also his greatest vulnerability. The Empire was not just hunting him, they were hunting them. The thought of his friends being captured, tortured, or killed because of his presence was a constant torment. He was a man who had already lost one family. He could not bear the thought of losing another. Ultimately, the burden of the blade was the burden of being a Jedi in a galaxy that no longer wanted one. It was the burden of carrying a legacy, of mentoring a future, and of living in a state of perpetual fear. But it was also the burden that forged him into the hero he was destined to be. It was in the face of this adversity, in the shadow of this constant threat, that Kanan Jarrus' spirit hardened, his faith deepened, and his commitment to the light became an unwavering fire. He may have carried the weight of the fallen, but in doing so, he became the living embodiment of the Jedi's enduring spirit, a testament to the idea that true heroism is not about avoiding the burden, but about finding the strength to carry it.